That's sick. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Best of the Mess with Alex Chidiak and
Joshua Smith.
a
Hey, I like it.
a.
I
It's
like it.
it sounded pretty formal, to be fair. I feel
It
like
was,
we
look,
could,
it
yeah,
was a bit formal.
yeah. I was like thinking, oh, do I get some like music, get like a party going on in the background? But no, no, I didn't think
I
that
was
far
kind
ahead.
of like, I was hoping you'd come in with the heat, but then I was like,
Mm.
just don't yell, don't scream,
Oh, true.
you know.
Well, I didn't scream. I'm in a calm mood. I've got probably one of the best teas I've made in a while right next to me,
Yeah.
so I'm very calm. Yeah.
I mean, you've talked about tea before. What's this one?
No, it's the same tea, same
Oh, okay.
Twinings tea. Yeah,
Same
just
Twinings.
just made it really well, you know.
No. I mean, after one of the last ones, I did think about Dilmah as I was going through the shops, and I was like,
No.
not for
Mm,
kids.
mm, 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 mm.
Well, Alex, what's been
No.
happening?
Lots of things have been happening, Josh. Lots of things. But I want to start with you. What have you been up to this week?
uh, I've been up to I've been up to a bit. It's actually pretty cool. Um, so let's say like professionally it sounds a bit off,
Mhm.
but professionally, I'm hiring a new physio. So we've got a new physio starting at the gym in about 3 weeks. So we'll be going through the process for onboarding her and setting everything up to get her into the system and the integrated into the performance group, which will be great. She's friends with one of our current staff members, Beck, and plays with her footy team. So she's got the experience. She plays at a high level football, and she can connect and resonate. She's just a great vibe. Like literally, that's what I was like. You're
Nice.
hired on your vibe.
That's
So that
true.
was cool. So basically been setting that up, and then I've been in planning for a lot of other stuff. Like January felt like such a head like mess to use the name of the podcast. Like it was so much
Yeah.
stuff in my brain. And I was only sort of reflecting on it the other day, and it was like I spent so much of January in preparation for other stuff. So like I spent January
Mm.
preparing for physio to come on board, preparing for this, getting this podcast up and running, and what we're doing for this, and preparing for things to come throughout the year. And when you're in preparation mode, you're not actually achieving anything. Like nothing's actually happening. There's no tangible outcome. And so I'm
Yeah.
constantly here like this, in my head, but then there's no like, oh, here's what came from that. It's like what's going to come is like 3 months time or 6 months time. So um actually been like getting stuff out of my head this week has been fantastic. So, planning things on that regard's been awesome. And then I am going away on holiday on Saturday.
Oh, wait, how did I not know about this?
I'm going to Bali for 8 days. So we're off for
Oh,
a 8-day exploration. I've been there many times before. So it's Marina's birthday today. So we're heading out on the weekend, which will be lovely.
damn, that's going to be so epic. I've never been to Bali. So I've always been told you need to go to Bali. And I'm like, I just haven't made it there yet. But are you guys going to do anything different that you haven't done before in Bali? Or is it just
Sort
going to
sort
be?
of, but not really. Like I've been there many times. And as you know. Um,
Mm.
And so this time it's more so just to kind of like relax and enjoy the experience. So Marina's only been there once. And when she got there, she was basically went to an island. Like she didn't actually experience Bali itself, the island.
Yep.
She went to an island off of Bali. And so basically this time I've gone, all right, cool. Because I've been there so many times. I think I counted out. I've been there like 12 or 13 times. So,
Whoa.
yeah. So um this time I'm actually going to go like, cool, I'll take you through. We're going to go to the beach, then we're going to go to the jungle, then we're going to go stay in the mountains, and just explore. I'm refreshing my language as well, so um,
Hey.
which will be cool. Hopefully, have enough when I get there. So the last couple of times I went, I only spoke Indonesian. And I don't speak English when I go there. So yeah, it was interesting because for me it's a complete disconnect. There has been a complete disconnect, whereas this time it's more like exploration. So that's kind of the idea behind things at the moment.
Wow. So you're going to speak Indonesian the whole time you're there?
No, not this time. So that is the
Okay.
difference.
So
That
the
is the
other
difference.
times, that's the difference.
Yeah. So the other times,
That's cool.
yeah, the other times I'd speak up. So for me, Bali was like um, it's a disconnect, right? Like it's the
Mhm.
closest non-Western culture to Australia, and it's very much rooted in like Southeastern Asian values, and um, although it's not indicative of like wider Indonesia, it is still that cultural disconnect. And so when I go there, I'm like, I'm not just going to go there and just like, use all this like Western privilege, which is what you see so much over there and really affects me.
Hmm.
So I think it was after about the fourth time I went, I was like, you know what, I'm going to learn the language and actually integrate myself in and amongst the culture. Made some friends over there, had some amazing experiences over there, um, purely through learning. And so every time I go back, I try a little bit more, and I'd spend hours and hours and hours in the lead up. I say hours, like hundreds of hours learning the language. So when I would go there, then literally the moment I get off the plane, don't speak any English until I get back on the plane at the end of the trip.
This is sick. How did I did not know this about you. I didn't even know you went to Bali that many times. I feel like surely the 14th trip is free or something. Like that's
Surely,
it,
surely.
surely. They've got like a photo of you on the wall. Like this man can just go straight through. Like that is so epic. So is that
Yeah.
something that you like? Because when was the first time you went over? Like how old were you?
Ooh. I reckon the first time I went, I would have been, let's say 22, maybe
Okay.
22. Um, yeah, I reckon it would have been around then. And then from there, what I would do is I would just go once every sort of 6 months or so. And I would literally go for 4 or 5 days at a time. It's just enough to get away,
Yeah.
disconnect, like, you know, um, reconnect with like myself and what I want to do and how I want to plan and what's coming up, and then come back. And so, yeah, it
Wow.
would have been, I reckon I was probably about 22.
So when you were 22, was that like a targeted approach? Like you wanted to go somewhere where there wasn't the Western culture? No. So you were just like, I'm
Yes.
gonna go to Bali.
No, that was
And
that
then
was targeted.
oh,
So
that was targeted.
yeah, not the first time. The first time I'm pretty sure was just a holiday. I'm pretty sure the first time I traveled overseas was Fiji, and
Hmm.
then that was interesting. Obviously, first time you go overseas, you're like, oh, new culture. What is this? And then from there, I was like, okay, cool, go to Bali because it's the closest place. And then from there, as I got into it and I enjoyed it, and I was like, oh, it's relatively cheap, it's relatively close. It's like what, 4.5 hour flight from Adelaide. It's
Yep.
not it's not that far to actually explore different things. And I've always been inquisitive and curious about the world. And so I think it was probably after, yeah, probably the second or third time I was like, oh, maybe I'll start learning a bit more. Like I've seen enough of Westerners in Bali, and in the places I was going to understand kind of how it comes across, and I didn't like that. And so I was like,
Okay.
I'm going to be different to that. I'm going to,
Hmm.
get into it a lot more. And at school, so in high school, we learned Indonesian up until the like year 9 or year 8, year 9,
Oh,
before it became like an elective, and I didn't choose
yep.
it. And so it had a bit of a background, but not enough. And so I just
Hmm.
went deep on it from there.
That is ridiculously cool.
Thank you.
Like, I don't know many people that are just like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna completely immerse myself in that culture and fully respect it. So I think that is more people need to do that. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's
So
been some pretty cool experiences from it. So I'll say that. Like I wrote an article in December, which was like 35 things that have helped like, guide my life. And one of them is learn a different language because it just
yeah.
opens up so many doors, as you would know, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that in terms of seeing other cultures, like, being exposed to that at a young age, I think that changes your perspective
hmm
massively. And then, yeah, I mean, what do you think the main thing you didn't like when you went to Bali about how Westerners treated
Um,
a different
the
culture?
main thing I didn't like was more so the abuse of privilege.
Hmm.
I'd have to put it like that. It was more the abuse of privilege. Like, and it's not everyone over there, but there is
Yeah.
a greater sub segment that, because we come from such a privileged culture, and the power of our dollar is a lot greater than the Indonesian rupiah.
Hmm.
You would get a lot of just advantage being taken and entitlement, and the idea that, you know, we're better than you, or you should serve us because we'll give you this money, or money just being thrown for the sake of it. And I didn't like that because it doesn't respect a human that's behind that at the end of the
Hmm.
day. No, yes, you've got power of the dollar, but at the end of the day, that's still a human being and that's still a person
Hmm.
there. And you're not taking any time to understand them and their situation. All you're doing is going over there and it's all about you and your holiday and what you want.
Yeah.
And that was what I didn't like. That was what I didn't like at all.
Wow. And does that change the way that you interact when you come back to Australia to people?
With people
Or,
here,
yeah, with
um,
people here?
I guess travel in itself, like I've spent a lot of years traveling and different places. And then for me, it's over time, everything kind of rubs off on you a little bit and you kind of see things a little bit differently, as you know, been to many
Mhm.
different places, right? And so it does inevitably change my interactions. In what way, I don't know. Is it conscious? I don't know. I would say
Mhm.
probably not consciously, but I try to think back to the beginning. I probably did change a few things consciously just to be like, hang on a second, like I'm not liking either how someone might be speaking or what they're saying or whatever. And so I try to then bring out and become that which I want to see in the world, right? So the answer is a yes, but it's a tentative yes. Like,
Yeah.
how I interact with people is how I interact with people, and all the
Mhm.
experience that I've been a part of are a part of me. So I would
Yep.
say, yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Mm.
Wow. This is cool. This is not where I thought this chat was going to go today, but
It's how we do. It's
oh
how
my
we
God,
do.
this is literally how we do. That's it. We're going to have to do like a Bali edition afterwards when you come back.
We can do a Bali edition. I'm totally
We'll
okay
do
with
a
that.
Bali edition. Yeah.
Some
Oh
of the
man.
one of the coolest things I'll say, one of the coolest things is when I went there, probably let's say seventh time, right? I got there, and it would have been my maybe second time, like really immersing myself in the language. By the end of the trip, because I hadn't spoken any Indonesian the whole any English the whole trip, and I only spoken Indonesian. There was like the last day, like I think I was flying out in the evening, and I was in my like hotel like breakfast. I was out for breakfast,
Mhm.
and I'm walking to where the breakfast section is, and I just recorded a video call in Indonesian to send back here to basically show people, hey, I'm over here and speaking Indonesian. Right? That's a whole other story.
Sick.
But I just
Yeah.
finished that, and I'm in my head walking to the breakfast bar, and two, I think they were English or Australian guys, older, walked past me, and they just went, "G'day, mate." And like I heard the Australian accent for like the first time. Like it was like I'd heard it just fresh because it's so much change of language in my mind that when I heard it, I was like, whoa, like it's different. Like that's what we sound like. It was so wild.
Yeah.
It was so wild. So that gave me an appreciation of the language, I think, and the difference in
Yeah.
languages. And, the language gives an understanding into people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And the more you
No,
can
massively.
learn, the more you get to understand people, which is fascinating.
It's like like a secret sometimes. That's how I feel.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, if I know this other language, like I've just unlocked this different part of life. Like
Yeah.
this, like I'm in a video game, like Mario and Luigi, right? You
Hmm.
level up. I'm like,
Hmm.
I've just unlocked this whole other side game that no one else around me knows. This is epic. Like,
How did you
I
go
don't know.
about doing it? Say, like, what Spanish would be your most proficient language, you would say?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, if we go back to birth, I was a Polish child. So my first word was in Polish.
Okay.
I said mleczko, which means milk.
Hmm.
So I think my parents had a lot of hope, like, damn, she's gonna be fluent in Polish. Didn't happen. I blame them for it. I definitely blame them for it.
Hmm.
But I did grow up around hearing a lot of Polish. So
Uh-huh.
there were a few things that I did pick up on as a young kid, but also it is a difficult language to learn. And if you're not actively fully immersed in it, I would say it's tough. But when I went over to Spain, I think I was just so oblivious to how hard it was going to be. Everyone just said, oh, once you're there, like you're going to learn it so quickly. No. That is a lie. Like there are other steps that you have to do before you learn it easy. And
Hmm.
I mean, I went over there like quite a reserved, anxious kid. So, getting out of my comfort zone to try and speak the language, to be okay with making mistakes was really, really tough for me. So the first year, I mean, I had teammates as well who some of them knew an Italian teammate and a Portuguese teammate who helped me massively. They were able to pick up on the Spanish a lot easier than I was,
Hmm.
but they also knew English. So, they kept like, they were so baffled that I just couldn't pick up anything. Nothing was retaining in my brain. And, I'd be studying Duolingo, but that was so detached to then the conversations I was having out when I was at training or the interactions I had at the grocery store. So essentially, what I needed to do, which I learned later on, was immerse myself more in daily activities and even at
Hmm.
training and really like be okay with making the mistakes, to understanding the word, to then to be able to put an experience to the word. That's how I'd
Yep.
remember it. And that's
Yep.
how I've been able to continue to grow in that way. But yeah, was absolutely oblivious going over there. So that's why after that first season, I was like, I need to study in the off season. So I
Hmm.
went and I completed a Cert 2 in applied language for Spanish. So that was more like,
Wow.
yeah, I was like, if I'm going back here, which I signed a 2-year deal, right?
Uh-huh.
So I just completed my first year. They wanted to extend, and I was like, yep, I'm going to commit to this, but I'm also going to commit to the language and commit to the culture. So this was when I was in Adelaide, and I would go in to do classes. It was one-on-one tutoring. I would learn more about the culture as well, so I could get more of an understanding of the things that I had seen
Hmm.
and the reasonings behind it and why. And then I was able to, when I came back, I was just way more confident and comfortable because I was like, okay, I've had these experiences in the past year. I was super uncomfortable and nervous because I didn't want to make mistakes, but now I've gone and learned the language. I felt way more comfortable to be open with my teammates and
Hmm.
to try different things. And I think like one of the most rewarding things was like actually being able to have a full conversation over the phone with someone who had no idea that I didn't know how to speak proper Spanish, but they understood everything I was saying. I understood everything they were saying, was able to make reservations, able to ask a bunch of questions. um so yeah, I think it took time, but the biggest thing was actually having the experiences and then
Hmm.
being able to translate that into. But it is tough when you're an anxious person. So it's
I
not the
had no
easiest.
idea. I had no idea you had the applied language. I knew you were studying it a lot. I knew you were studying it.
Yeah.
I didn't know you'd gone to the certificate level. You know.
Yeah.
So how like from how would you say the certificate, like the applied language certificate, helped you out as opposed to Duolingo and then being there? Like could you explore that a little bit in a little bit more depth?
Yeah, so I think the tutor that I had, she was really good. Had a South American background. I don't remember exactly where she was from, but just the way that we're able to communicate and talk to, like, we're able to make our conversations a little bit more relatable and a little bit more like, okay, I need to learn football communication. And she was able to give me the right ways in speaking that. So I was able to
Mhm.
ask questions in English, have that explained to me in English and Spanish, and then let it click in my brain. Whereas, you're asking people in Spanish how to explain that in Spanish and then trying to like filter that in, it's not working.
Yep.
So I just felt like it was a safer space for me to like ask, I guess, the silly questions in a sense. And then we would be able to just have conversations, daily conversations. I mean, I really wanted to feel confident catching public transport there, knowing, which is the right and wrong way, knowing to ask for directions and things. So we would sit there and do, our whole classes would be, and I think like when I had to finish it off with like the final test or whatever that we did, it was a whole bunch of different components. And I was always good at reading it. I was just never that great at speaking and coming up
Hmm.
with the words in my head, but I could understand what was going on. Um, but we practiced a hell of a lot on just speaking and having daily conversations like, what are you doing today? Where are you going to go after? And then as I got better at that, then I got to make it more football related, like what time's the game? Like, what's who are we playing against and all that kind of stuff. So by the time I ended up back in Spain, I was like, all right, I've already made these mistakes. I've had these conversations already. And now I feel like I'm ready to go off the bat. And I'm someone that, like, as soon as I get into a country, I'm so hyper aware of my surroundings, like
Yeah.
scarily hyper aware. I mean, I know Madrid so well. um, but like I need to know everything to feel like I don't know what it is in me, but like I've always been really street savvy and street smart. Like I can tell once I've done the trip once, I know exactly how to get there again.
You know why? It's because you're
Um,
from the north of Adelaide.
True. That helps. That helps. Um, but honestly, like I think it was actually good having that year prior where
Hmm.
I mean, I was on high alert. It was a tough year. Like it
Yeah.
was basically I was always in fight or flight mode, just like hyper aware of everything, what's safe, what's not safe. I don't fully know. Um, and then it came to, all right, I've done that. I've gone and studied. I'm going back to something way more familiar. I know the people, I know the city. Like, let's get stuck in. So it took a bit more time. And then, Duolingo was obviously my best friend as well. So, like, doing that study plus Duolingo, it all started to make more sense to me because you can't
Hmm.
always ask the little mascot owl, like, can you explain this to me? But I could ask a person that question. So they were able to fill in the blanks, and then Duo, like, expanded my vocabulary, I would
Mm,
say. Um, and yeah, it got to the point where like we had more internationals come
mm.
through, and then I was able to be kind of the translator for some of them that didn't know
Wow.
the language. So that was like really cool. So like the whole coming back to the whole thing of like you feel like you know a secret. Like it was just like eye opening. Your world just expands instantly once you understand what's happening there and you fully embrace yourself in the culture.
And have you continued learning now as you're back here?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I was in Spain from what 2018 to 2021. Um, and then when I came back to Australia, I made sure I continued on Duolingo.
Hmm.
So have basically been doing that quite consistently for quite a few years now. And I, had no idea I was going to end up in another Spanish speaking country. But
Hmm.
once I like landed in Mexico, I was flying. Like I knew
Wow.
like I could understand everything the coach was saying. I could understand absolutely everything that was going on. Could have full on conversations with people. There was still bits that I was a bit hesitant with, but it was so cool to see. Like I haven't lost that, and just being able to keep that up in the background is like something I think everybody should do. It's really, really cool.
That's so fantastic. I didn't know you'd continued it. Um, and I imagine, South American, well, I don't imagine, I know South American Spanish compared to European Spanish is a little bit different. It's gonna be harder to pick
Yep.
up the sounds. Um, First of all, I want to address like why don't we follow each other on Duolingo? We've got to get this shit sorted.
Okay, what is
Yeah.
even following each other? Like the amount of random people. Like I have 4 followers and they are super random, but they congratulate me on like with the little things and I'm just like, who are you people? I don't even know what the point of following
You know
people is
what?
on Duolingo.
I
But
don't even care who they are as long as you celebrate me when I hit my wins. It's all good. I
oh
think
my
it's
gosh,
it,
okay.
it's like a bit of a social it's a social connection part of things. It's just a bit of fun. So
Yeah.
I mean like let's just do it. It would be great.
Um, I mean,
What do
if there's
you
one like mascot in this world that I really want to meet, it is Duo. Like absolutely iconic, complete menace of a mascot. I need to meet Duo, so we'll make that happen.
surely you could do it. Surely in your travels you could go to the Duolingo headquarters. I'm not sure what country they're in, but I'm sure you could go there
Yeah.
and meet the mascot, the owl.
Oh my gosh, that would be so epic.
How often do you have conversations now in
Conversations in
Spanish?
Spanish.
In
I
Spanish.
mean, not as much since I've most recently moved back. I did try to make more of an effort in like dedicating a soul, like at least at minimum half an hour a day
Mhm.
to a mix of things, going through the lessons, but also with the reading and speaking, making sure that I'm getting at least every little bit every single day. I've taken a bit of a break since coming back from Mexico just to sort my life out here, but I have very much every intention to get back into that once I get into a more of a
Mhm.
routine. And yeah, in terms of speaking, like, there'll be sometimes when after games, someone will start speaking to me in Spanish, which is pretty cool here in Australia. And that just opens up once again like another side of things here
Hmm.
where I can connect with more people and they can connect with me no matter like where they've come from, what their background is. When you have language, there's like that added connection. And I think that part of it's super cool as well because Australia is so multicultural and diverse. Like now I'm able to tap into like another side of
Yeah.
Australia, I feel. So I'm hoping more conversations come up. I do want to once again continue with the Spanish. But yeah, taking a slight break at the moment.
I mean, you're very much adulting at the moment. You are doing all the adult things.
I am.
With I'm really fascinated. Like you get a lot of follower support, right? Like, let's say social media, but not just socials, like actually in person, those who enjoy your game, those who enjoy watching you play, and who do come out because you're who you are. When you're out there and you're say post game signing interviews, chat with fans and whatnot, and someone throws something to you in Spanish, how quick does it take you to like switch your brain into that other language? Because I've talked to, and the reason I say this is because I've talked to people who Spanish is their first language, or they might have another language as their first language. English is their second language. And so that's just
Mhm.
inherently natural for them. Whereas for someone whose first word was in Polish, and then the majority of their life was in English, and you've actually made a focused effort on learning the language. How quick does it change for you? And what's that experience like with that fan or those fans in that moment then?
It does it's like a little bit of a shock because you're like, oh wait, where am I back in Spain? Am I back in Mexico? Like what's just happened? Um, I think the first thing I'll always say is hola. Like I'll just like it'll just change. Like everything just changes. And then it's like, ¿cómo estás? Like you just kind of go on from there and it's
Mm-hmm.
very brief. And the interactions are quite brief, but it's I don't know, you just like the different personality comes out and you're like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
like this is cool. Um, it does take a little bit of time though. Like I do have to, there was a period where I was studying so much and it was, I think I had gone to Spain. I'd been there for a few months, then came back because it was during COVID. And I would be thinking in Spanish. So I would like be listening to a conversation and I would be thinking of what my response would be in Spanish. And that became like very natural and common. And sometimes I try to consciously like make a little bit of an effort of if I'm following a conversation, I'm not really fully into it, like what I would say in Spanish if that was the case. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of just sit there and people might think like, what the hell is she doing? I'm just sitting there in my head, like thinking in a different language. Um, and yeah, my good mate, Ivy Lewick, who will definitely get on the podcast at some point. She also studies Spanish. And sometimes when we go into camp, we speak in Spanish to each other, just so no one else knows what we're talking about. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's cool. It's cool. So like we both really want to get better at it. So yeah, we sometimes use bits and pieces of camp to do that, or we'll be like, all right, in this session, you're only allowed to say like Spanish cues and
Mm-hmm.
like call for the ball in Spanish or whatever. So yeah, we sometimes make up little games and on the bus try and have conversations and things, but then we get too carried away and start speaking in very fast English. So
What you're talking about is really cool because when I listen to Michelle Thomas, now you're familiar with the Michelle Thomas method of language learning?
no,
Oh,
no.
look into Michelle Thomas, Michel Thomas. He's passed now, but his language learning was just ridiculous. And he spoke something like 7 or 10 languages fluently, but he could translate from one language to another language without it being his
Whoa.
native languages. It's just this kind of level of intensity. But in his audio, like he's got audio learnings and audio lessons. In them, it's really interesting because I he talks about getting the ball over the net, right? And he talks about, as long as you can get someone on the other side to understand what you're saying, they will then correct you or help you through
Mhm.
things. And then it's like playing tennis. You say something which might have a bit of, not be grammatically correct, they then throw something back to you and you go, oh, cool, that's how I do it. And you process.
Yep.
And it's this process getting the ball over the net or explaining something in a way that the person understands, which might not be vocab correct or
Mhm.
grammatically correct. That's how you learn and develop. And it's exactly what you've been saying, which is really, really cool to hear in practicality. Like in actuality, that's what you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, true.
And also keeping things specific is something that Tim Ferriss talked about when he was learning Japanese. He would go
Mm.
and do the lessons, and this is part of where I started doing myself as well. Like he would talk about, you know, he would go and do the lessons and whatnot, but it wasn't applicable to his daily life. It was only
Mm.
when he started to learn sayings and sentences and words that actually pertain to him learning a martial art, which is what he was doing, that it actually then clicked for him.
Yeah.
And it's all
It's
the stuff you've
definitely through
said.
experience. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's so
Damn.
fascinating. It's so
Mm.
fascinating, and it's really cool to hear this from you. Like we've never had these chats, which is why we've got this show. Actually, to be honest,
Exactly. It's the whole point. It's just for us to have a chat and for all of you to listen to our chat.
pretty much, pretty much. I've actually thought about doing certificates in language learning. So to hear you say it, we might actually chat more about this offline because I'm very keen
Yeah.
on doing some stuff and the one-on-one side of things as well, where you've got a safe space to actually engage is
Mm.
pertinent. It's really pertinent,
Yeah.
really powerful. So yeah, so this is cool. Maybe we translate this to Spanish and we get out to all your Spanish
Oh my
followers.
gosh. That'd be so sick. Yeah, well, I mean, speaking like on language, something that I've always been interested in learning and I've started looking into it a little bit more now is learning Auslan, so sign language. So have actually looked into a few courses to see if I can, start that up as well, because I think that
Mhm,
that's also another very untapped way of communicating with people and understanding people on a deeper level and being able to connect them in turn. Because I think where it sparked up recently again was when I was over in Mexico speaking to a really great organization over there about what they do. They started speaking about how they also have a fully deaf program. And it's football. Deaf kids get to play football. They get to feel safe in that space as well. Have people that are fully trained in Auslan, and I mean it's different in all different countries.
mhm,
But for them, it has been such a successful program, and they've just watched these kids completely change. Their personalities come out, feel seen and heard in the community through football, which is obviously the stuff I'm like wildly into. But yeah, it just made me think, if I could learn Auslan here in Australia, the stuff that I could then in turn give back to the community here through the deaf community here in Australia, wherever that may be, would be really cool. So that's another thing on my list of things to learn. They don't
mhm.
have that on Duolingo yet, but we'll get there.
Mm-mm.
We'll get there.
It's not there. It's not there.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
your focus on your community is so inspiring. It's so inspiring, and it doesn't surprise me you want to learn Auslan to help out the community at all. At all. Like you said, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
like this doesn't surprise me, and I think it's super powerful. Like it's really really cool and really really cool to hear. I'd be very keen to hear how you go when you do start to learn because I think is it like a TAFE course or a certificate, and you can go
Yeah, I
up through
think
the levels.
Yeah, I think you can go up through the levels. So I'm just looking at very entry level at the moment. I think it is
Hmm.
like obviously it's quite a difficult thing to learn and you have to put a lot of effort into that. So essentially for this part of the season, at the moment, I mean, I obviously joined halfway through. We're heading towards the end of the season now. I'm going to have an off season for the first time in very long time. Um, I want to make sure that I fill that space with something that in turn will help me post career, but also I can make an impact throughout my career when people actually want to work with me. um, and yeah, so I think that's a really cool thing that I can tap into. And I like using my hands when I talk, so why not use it in a more impactful way?
Oh, it fits in very well. It fits in very, very well. Look, you know what? We've only got a couple of minutes left for today's show,
Yeah.
and we will be coming back with another show very soon. But is there anything you want to say before we go in Spanish, in Auslan, in English, in
Oh.
Polish? Anything you want to throw out there right now? What's on your mind? What message have you got for the listeners? I'm keen to hear it.
Oh my gosh, that's really putting me on the spot. I mean, look, I don't know Auslan yet, so I can't give anything. Um, Any insight into that? Once again, oh, actually, I know this one word that I ended up writing on my shin pads. Well, I got my grandma to write it, which was basically "I love you" in Polish.
Hmm.
So kocham cię is that. I don't know if I've pronounced it right, but I just remember having it. I think I still have it on a shin pad. It's like written on tape in my grandma's handwriting, which is really special to me. So yep, I love you to the listeners. And what can we say in Spanish? What are we vibing? Because you can speak
Ah,
Spanish as well. You've
un
also not
poquito,
let
un
that on.
poquito,
Un
un
poquito.
poquito. What I would say in Spanish at the moment is, perro, no entiendo.
Madre mía.
I'm,
Adiós.
I'm glad you said that and not something else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
I will say is gracias, hasta pronto, and hasta mañana.
You're gonna see everyone tomorrow.
I'm gonna see you tomorrow.
You're gonna see me tomorrow.
I'm not actually, which sucks, you know.
Yeah,
No, but
yeah.
that's all
There's
I would say.
That's sick.
Because I haven't actually spent too much time recently on my Spanish. I've been on my
Hmm.
Indonesian, so I've been trying to switch my brains.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the midst of this Venn diagram. But yes, I can speak a little bit, and that's the end of this conversation. We'll keep it there.
I do have a question though, because you're learning, like I found it super difficult when I started learning Japanese.
Hmm.
Like, is it hard to go from, I mean, I'm assuming you started learning Indonesian before Spanish.
Uh-huh.
Is it difficult because there's just completely different principles? There's not a lot of things that match up, or
The the this is going to sound very cliche. The difficulty depends on how much you put into it.
Mhm,
Um, the difference is Indonesian is a very simple language. It's probably one of the most simplest language in the world. And the reason for that is that there's not many, it's not very descriptive. It's not romantic, meaning it doesn't have masculine and feminine verbs, you know, um, and it's super simple sentence structure.
mhm,
So going from English to Spanish was a lot harder than going from say Spanish to Indonesian or English to Indonesian. In
mhm,
Indonesian you've got the same letters, so English letters. You don't have many vocabulary changes or sound changes. You don't have many of them. You've got C's which are pronounced like the ch in chicken, and you've got
mhm.
R's which are rolled, and that's about it. Everything else is
Okay.
as you read it. The word for I is saya, so Saya, right? As
Mhm.
you read it, it's pronounced pretty much. So
Yep.
not super difficult. It's actually probably easier. If I was going to like Japanese or Chinese, where you've got a whole bunch of different inflection, it would be a lot harder. So it's a bit different to general Southeastern, like or Asian languages in that regard because there is no like tonality.
Mhm.
But that's a great question.
Hey. Okay, well, I think we do have to wrap it up because we've got a minute
Uh-huh.
until this thing cuts out, and I hope
Uh-huh.
that the recording actually saves this time. But
It's gonna.
um, yeah, it's gonna. We're gonna
Mhm.
manifest that. But hasta pronto.
Hasta pronto, amiga. Bye.
Bye.